Welcome everyone to another captivating episode of Zishan's podcast where we discuss all things branding and more. Our today's guest is Dr. Amit Nagpal, who's a renowned author. He has written a book, Personal Branding, Storytelling and Beyond, co-authored with Dr. Prakash Hindustani. He's also a community builder with an impressive background in personal branding and social networking, and he has mentored numerous entrepreneurs on their path to success. Dr. Amit, welcome to our today's podcast. And I'm excited to host you. And before we get into the nitty-gritties, can you share some pivotal moments that led you to where you are today? And how did you figure out that personal branding is the thing of the present and the future?
Thanks, Zishan. Uh, in fact, I was one of the pioneers of personal branding way back in 2011. And at that point of time, if you type personal branding or personal branding in India on Google, there were, hardly 2 or 3 people in India who were talking about it at that point of time. So, of course, a lot of people were talking about celebrity management, which was more like maintaining existing personal brands rather than building a brand. So, personal branding was a term which was more about building somebody's brand. Now, I remember certain things. I think Tom Peters was the first one to coin the term personal branding, but then Tom Peters had hardly written any literature about personal branding so William Arruda in US, he was the first person who started blogging, talking about personal branding. His organization Reach Personal Branding started offering certification courses. So William, I would give the credit to William Arruda for popularizing the concept of personal branding across the world. Maybe I should thank Google because I accidentally came across William Arruda's profiles and used his website, and then I started following him on social media, learning more about personal branding, and then slowly I began to realize that, that famous quote is there: "It's all in the mind." I began to realize that it's all in the brand. And I accidentally came across William Arruda's profile. Social media has democratized branding. It is not expensive to build a brand. Social media, mass media, anybody who is good at what you do can build a brand.
Many startup founders are focused on their product or services, Dr. Amit. Why should they also invest time and effort in building a personal brand?
As a startup founder, nobody knows your organization, or hardly very few people know about your organization because your organization is new. But you may be a 30 or 40-year-old startup founder. If you are a 30-year-old startup founder, then you already have a 30-year-old personal brand. So why don't you leverage that personal brand to build your organization brand, number one? In fact, I have written a very detailed blog which you can find through Google, leveraging personal brand to build the organization brand. Now, let me give you 1 or 2 specific examples. Let's say the startup founder is started an organization relating to artificial intelligence. Now, the founder may have some credentials. Let's say he has done maybe a 6-month certificate from one of the IITs on artificial intelligence, or he has studied his engineering or MCA or some course, MS in maybe from US. And there is something he has done relating to artificial intelligence, education, experience. Even somebody who is an expert in AI has mentored him. Now all these things not only build his personal credibility, his personal brand actually increases the the strength of the organization brand, because if the founder is an expert in AI, then the organization will create great products on AI.
Interestingly, I also came across such a founder who was contradicting with the same exact thought which you are saying here. That why should I need to invest time and effort and thoughts and mind and sweat and blood into building my personal brand when my product is going to be so amazing that it's going to rule the world across. I told him the similar thing, that my friend, your brand is going to do it, but it hasn't done it yet, whereas your personal brand is already there. So just leverage it to maybe push your product or services or brand to a further heights. Simplify it. It's about creating the trust and connection with your audience right from the beginning. Startup founders to focus on storytelling when they are not creative writers themselves. So if they look to build that connection and the trust from the beginning, they'll find themselves in a troubled water. What can they do in such a scenario? How can startup founders effectively use storytelling to build their personal brand?
Personal branding actually has become much more easier in the past, maybe I would say 1 year after the arrival of generative AI tools like ChatGPT, Google Bard, and so on.
Yeah.
First of all, let's say if I was writing a blog, it was taking me at least 3 to 4 hours to research about that topic. So, which those 4 hours can be saved now because maybe ChatGPT can create a rough blog for you, so you don't have to waste time on research. That is number one. Number
Right.
two, you may ask me, okay, if ChatGPT has written the blog, is it really building my brand? Now that is where the catch comes. You have to add your personal stories and anecdotes, your
Right.
experiences, your opinions to that ChatGPT blog, so that it gets your personal touch, it gets your human touch. That is one example. Similarly, we can find so many interesting things which we can use. And same way, I would say that not only personal brand can be leveraged for the organization brand, same way organization can be leveraged to build the personal brand. And for the startup founder,
Right.
as a startup founder, you are the voice or the spokesperson of your organization. So anything which you say also becomes the voice of the organization. So I would say that personal brand and organization brand at the level of CEO or at the level of startup founder get very closely intertwined. So both, support each other and both can be leveraged to build each
You
other.
just made it easier for everybody out there who wants to, build a personal brand but don't know how to really write. So go to ChatGPT or any AI writing tool which you find easier to communicate with. Put in your personal stories and try to find the content which resonates with you and will resonate with your audience as well. And that's how you can leverage authenticity for storytelling. Dr. Amit, that was indeed insightful. And in your book, you share a message which really resonated with me. It's a powerful message. It reads out like, branding is the only journey, and bonding is the destination. And it's even mentioned in your book's review. And I was intrigued to read this as a branding expert. How did you came up with this life-changing thought, Dr. Amit?
So, in any part of the world, relationships are important for business also. But
Mm-hmm.
in Eastern cultures, we tend to be more emotional. I have seen, so many entrepreneurs in India who, when they have a foreign visitor, when they have a business guest also, they will invite the guest to their home, for lunch or
Right.
dinner or, a cup of coffee. So that means in India, we do not segregate personal relationships very strictly from professional relationships. They do get, mixed up. From that perspective, building relationships is a little more important compared to Western culture. Now, building the brand only will not be sufficient in Eastern cultures. You have to build the brand to build the relationships. I had written one microblog on LinkedIn long back. India runs on relationships. When you build a brand, then it becomes easier to network with more senior people. They will take you with more credibility rather than with a pinch of salt. It will become easier to get an appointment with a senior person. So many advantages will happen over a period of time that you will start realizing that, okay, people are actually looking at me with different eyes today. My brand has won me so much respect, credibility. Now, once there was an interesting question which came up from a college chairman where I was teaching, and he said,
Mm-hmm.
Amit, everybody can write anything about themselves on social media today. So how do we decide what is credible and what is not? Now, that was a pretty
Okay. Wow.
interesting question, and my answer was
Yeah.
very simple, Deshan.
Uh-huh.
My answer was, a story is as credible as the storyteller. So,
Wow.
as the CEO, as the organization, if people trust you, then they will trust your content also. But if they don't trust you, then they will not trust your stories and content also. So it becomes important to win that trust and retain that trust by being authentic in our storytelling rather than making up stories. Now these stories can come from day-to-day experiences, what we also call as anecdotes, uh,
Mm-hmm.
where we may have, let me give you, if I give you some very simple examples. uh, let's say one of my, I have actually written a very interesting series on LinkedIn, Memories with Mentors. Now,
Okay.
one of my mentors was Air Vice Marshal A.S. Gurunathan, who's a very famous personality in the defense forces in India. Now,
Right.
when I share a story of my experiences with him, it builds my credibility, it builds his credibility, it creates a win-win situation. And by sharing that story, it becomes memorable for the audiences, because stories always have an element of emotion which goes into our subconscious mind, which is remembered by the human brain.
In today's time and world where instant gratification is everything, how can startup founders leverage platforms like LinkedIn and Twitter to enhance their personal brand while ensuring that they're building that trust and memorability along the way?
There is actually one whole chapter in my book, How to Become an Interesting Person, in the
Yeah.
Amazon bestseller book which I have written, Personal Branding, Storytelling, and Beyond. Now, actually, I will talk about something related to that chapter, because that chapter focuses on how to become an interesting person. But I would talk
Mm-hmm.
about how to create an interesting social media bio. For example, if you go to my LinkedIn, I made a slight
Mm-hmm.
modification 2 days back. Because of the generative AI, I have added, section in my LinkedIn headline, human machine collaboration. So,
Nice.
collaborating with machines is becoming more and more important, because we have to save time by using generative AI tools. But at the same time, we need to add a human touch to that mechanical content which they may create. That is one example. In fact, another interesting example, even my Facebook profile bio, I added something pretty interesting, fond of deep conversations, deep relationships, and deep dives. Now, these are the kind of lines which people remember for a long time to come, because they are very unique.
Yeah.
If I give you one very interesting example, so there is a gentleman called Patrick Fuss. He was based in New Zealand when I connected with him in 2010. He was an organization development professor. He worked for the Auckland government also. Now, what I remember about his LinkedIn profile is that his LinkedIn profile had one word which caught my attention. In those days, LinkedIn used to have a hobbies and interests section. So there was a word in his profile, shamanism. Now, I had never heard of this word. I went to Google, tried to understand the meaning, and shamanism itself is a pretty interesting concept, popular among tribal cultures. Which,
Right.
if I tell you in simple words, it is the opposite of black magic. It is some kind of a white magic which is used for, connecting with souls and for healing, spiritually. Now that was the
Right.
interesting one which caught my attention. Even after 13 years, I still remember that word on his profile, and his profile became memorable because of that single word.
So if you had to sum it up, how should a startup founder should go about building their personal brands on LinkedIn or Twitter for that matter?
Like I was saying, that the first thing is creating a memorable bio. Then the focus should be on building relationships. Now, building relationships does not mean you have to create content all the time. Maybe one way of building
Right.
relationship is to make an intelligent comment on somebody's post. Maybe share a useful resource which you had created some time back, because let's say somebody is talking about, let's say, introverts have these typical challenges. They tend to be more shy and sensitive, and you have written a blog relating to that topic, and you share the link that, okay, I have discussed this topic in detail in my blog. So you share a relevant resource in the comment. That is also a way of building relationships, especially with like-minded people. Now, Then the next step can be, creating more detailed blogs, creating videos, creating newsletters, creating more in-depth content will actually get you more credibility in today's knowledge economy. In fact, one
Right.
of the premier networking clubs of Gurgaon, which had invited me to conduct a session on storytelling for them, I was, talking on the same lines. I gave them an interesting example that, I was not very familiar about your club, but when I went on the LinkedIn company page, and then it shows you 10 of your connections, follow this page. Then I clicked and I found some of the very, senior people in my network who following that page. Now that immediately created credibility. Now, these are
Credibility.
small things which startup founders have to do, because organizations cannot network with, other people. So people will have to network with people. In fact, if I give you a very interesting example, that if you look at the followers engagement of the Twitter handle of Mr. Anand Mahindra, and you look at
Mm-hmm.
the Twitter handle of Mahindra Group, then you will be surprised, because it's the whole Mahindra Group doesn't even have 10% of Mr. Anand Mahindra's followers, not even
Right.
10% of engagement. Why? Very simple. People want to talk to people. People don't want to talk to organizations, or they can't even talk to organizations. So, social media in that sense, is a powerful tool, but you have to build relationships. But if I'm feeling
Right.
that, I'm talking to a faceless organization, then of course, I feel it.
You broke so many myths in just one whole sentence, and the question which I'm posing right now is not even script. So what I want to know from you is, can you share some of the myths which you thought were true initially and now you feel are just myths? They weren't true.
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, Zishan, because I remember in 2011, the moment you said personal branding, people will think and talk about Madonna or Michael Jackson or Barack Obama, because personal branding is equal to celebrities. Personal
Yeah.
branding is something which only celebrities do. That was the most powerful myth at that point of time. And now, if you type personal branding expert or personal branding coach on LinkedIn today, you will find maybe 2,000 or 5,000 coaches across India. At that
Right.
time, there were only two people, talking about personal branding in the whole country. So, that was because of such myths, people were not able to understand, and that has taken quite some time.
To wrap up, Dr. Amit, what's your advice for startup founders who might feel just like you did, hesitant about personal branding or feel overwhelmed by it? What's that advice for them?
Do not look at it as personal branding, look at it as networking. If you are a startup founder and you want to meet a senior IAS officer, now if you have a personal portal, if you have a personal brand, if you have created content which that IAS officer has read, maybe you have more credibility, and then you have more chance of getting an appointment with that IAS officer or that minister, or that big maybe you want to become a vendor for Maruti Suzuki. So you want to talk to bigger companies, you want to talk to senior people, you want to talk to uh, like for example, you know uh, there was someone, I like this same person I was speaking to at that Gurgaon networking club, and she told me, I have read your newsletters and I can see that you are an authority on business storytelling, and I would be happy to give you a referral. Now, once people
Right.
trust you because you have demonstrated that knowledge, then things move on faster and more quickly.
Dr. Amit, your thoughts and strategies are truly wonderful. Thank you so much for being you and sharing all the tricks with us. And we hope to host you again with another interesting topic soon in the future. And that wraps up another episode of Zishan's podcast, where we discuss all things branding and more. I'm sure you found this discussion as intriguing and helpful as I did. So don't forget to hit the subscribe button, Don't forget to send a connection request to Dr. Amit on LinkedIn or whichever platform you can find him on. And stay tuned for more captivating weekly conversations around branding and more. And as we say goodbye, let me leave you with a mantra. Your unique voice can make you a thought leader in your own way. Know its importance. See you next week, everyone.